Fly we're working on today is another Alaska pattern. This is the pink and purple egg-sucking leech. I'll show you how I do it. There's a couple things a little different in here, and we'll go through them as we go along. So first off in the vise is one of these U502 hooks, size 2. It's a great heavy wire hook, works well, has a nice wide gap. This is a 1/4 inch fire orange bead, or excuse me, fire orange cone. We're going to take about 10 wraps of 020 lead wrap on here. 3, 4. And then we're just going to put our fingernail on that, break it off, give it a couple little twists. Same thing with our back tag. Give it a couple little twists and it'll pop right off there. And then we'll stuff that up in the bead. For thread today, we've got more uni thread, uni 6/0 in purple. We'll start that behind the lead wraps. Give it a couple layers there. Then we're going to take a couple crisscross wraps across it to the front and to the back, front and backwards a couple of times. Then we'll wrap it a little more solid, and that will help us really bind our lead down. And we'll come back here and we're going to trim our thread off right there. Next step on this fly is going to be the tail. I use pink marabou. I just have one strand of pink marabou here, and we've stripped away the tufts. We want this tail to be about 1 body length, so we'll kind of measure off a body length there. And then our tie-in point, we're going to tie in right behind, right where our lead wraps stop. So we'll give that a couple of good solid wraps there. And we'll spiral back to the end of the hook shank, give it a couple wraps there, and then trim off our excess. Next, for some flash, good old-fashioned crystal flash, this rainbow crystal. We're just going to do two strands here, and tie it in 2 on each side of the fly. So we'll start here on the near side, give that a couple of wraps. Pull our tag ends up and over the top, lay it along the far side, give it a couple wraps back, and now we got our crystal or our rainbow flash down both sides of our fly. Measure them off there and clip them about the same length as the tail. Now we're using on this fly, we're using for hackle, we're going to use, whoops, get that back here, we're going to use purple Schlappen hackle. And if you ever use Schlappen hackle, this stuff's great. It's super buggy. You can see these just super webby fibers on here. One of the downsides to that, though, is it's nearly impossible to reinforce with like a wire rib or a monofilament rib or something like that, because you just tie down all those webby fibers. So I'm going to show you how I reinforce this little trick that I do on these. We're going to tie it in by the tip. And we're going to tie this on the near side on this particular pattern, and I'll show you why here in just a second. We're going to tie that on. We're going to come back here to the back, and then as we get back here to the back, we're going to make a dubbing loop. And this dubbing loop is what we're going to use to reinforce that hackle. So we're just going to make a quick dubbing loop here, tie it off, bring it right back to the back where our hackle is, and then we're just going to take our dubbing twister, simple little dubbing twister, and we're just going to hang that in the dubbing loop for now, and that's just going to be a placeholder. For the body on this, we are using Crystal Flash Chenille in fluorescent fuchsia, nice bright pink color, and with these materials, these like this, go ahead and pull out a few of the fibers there and leave yourself just a little bit of the core of that exposed, and that's what we're going to tie in. So we're going to come here where near the back here where we're at. I'm going to lay that core, just that core material in, tie it down real good, make sure all that's tied back to the same point. Then we're going to work forward with our thread, and we're just going to bind down all the rest of these materials as we work forward. Nice touching wraps, and you can see by putting our material in like we did, we filled in the gap behind our leg and give ourselves a nice smooth body to work with, and bring our thread right up behind the bead. Now simple wrap our body material here, our chenille, and we're just going to wrap that in touching wraps. And you can see I kind of just preen back the fibers as you wrap this, just give you a fuller body. And I don't use the rotary on this because we just got too much other stuff hanging off here. So we're just going to go hand over hand and just kind of push those fibers back as you wrap it forward. Get nice, good touching wraps going up here. And we're going to stop. We're going to give ourselves just a little bit of room behind that bead. We don't want to necessarily crowd up behind, right up behind it, because we want to make a couple turns of hackle there up in the front. So we're just going to give that about 3 wraps, get it tied off, snip it out of the way. Now I'm going to show you how we do this dubbing loop hackle method. I know it's kind of facing away from you, but all we're going to do, we're just going to take our dubbing loop, and we're going to pull it down here with our hackle, and we're going to take one of these little hook loop style dubbing pliers, and we're just going to grab the base of our hackle, but you want to kind of pull this tight towards you a little bit. Grab the base of our hackle and the 2 strands of our dubbing loop at one time, and then we're just going to get rid of our dubbing twister because we don't need it for this step. And then all we're going to do, kind of show you here, we're just going to twist this up, give it 2, 3, 4 good twists on there, and you can see we've kind of made a dubbing brush almost out of our hackle. But what that's done is that's wrapped our thread around the stem of our hackle, and it's going to reinforce it as we wrap it forward, and yet we haven't tied down any of our fibers. We still have the great buggy, webby Schlappen fibers going on. And this one, I'm going to start one wrap by itself, and I do that to make sure I don't do exactly what I did and catch my tail material in there. You want to make sure your flash and your tail doesn't get caught in your dubbing loop. We're going to give it one twist like that to get it started, and then we're going to use our rotary function, and then we're just going to work this forward palmer it forward in open wraps, work it forward. Sometimes you do have to manage your thread here a little bit and work it forward. And we get up here to the front, right behind our bead, we're just going to wrap a couple of times there. And as we do this, we want to make sure we're preening those fibers backwards. And they kind of fill, if you've done this right, they push right up in behind the bead and fill the gap behind the bead there. So we'll wrap this up. Don't pull too hard, or you start to pull your dubbing or your hackle clamp off there. Get our fibers preened out there. Now we're just going to tie that off. We're going to give it 1, 2 wraps, and we kind of looks like we have a mess here, but we're going to clean that up and trim out our stem and the remainder of our hackle fibers. And then just going to take this and preen it backwards. Get everything pulled backwards, and we're going to wrap right behind our bead. And you just want to lay a few good wraps in there. You can see how I'm kind of pulling my thread forward a little bit as I wrap, so that it's laying right up in tight behind that bead. Give it several good wraps in there like that. Spin our dubbing, or spin our thread to unwind it a little bit, and then we're just going to give ourselves about a 3-turn whip finish right behind the bead. Tie that off. We'll do that twice, like do 2, 3 turns with these. Pull that in tight. Pop our thread off with our scissors. And we're going to grab our bodkin here, and we're just going to make sure we don't have too many of those Schlappen fibers caught up in our bound down. Just kind of preen those out just a little bit. And there you go. We got those. And now we're going to use our same bodkin here to work a little head cement in up behind the, up underneath the bead. Put a little bit on the tip of our needle, and you come right in here and you kind of just force it up inside the bead. And as you do that, it kind of wicks up inside the cone head there and reinforces all of our fibers. And there you go. That's your super buggy, super webby, And these Schlappen fibers, they move in the water like marabou. It's amazing how alive that thing comes in the water. I caught a lot of fish in Alaska on that last time I was there. But there you go. There's my pink and purple Schlappen egg-sucking leech.